see Michelle there now.
Yes, I'm here.
Good.
How are you?
Perfect. That's just 7 o'clock on the dot now. So good evening, everyone. You're all very welcome to this evening's webinar. I hope everyone's keeping safe and well. If you bear with us just another minute or two, the attendee numbers are going up there over the last minute or so. So I just want to give everyone a chance to join us. So if you just kindly bear with us over the next minute or so. My name is Jack McCartney, so I work in the Games Administration Department for the GAA in Croke Park. So I'll just be coordinating this evening's webinar on Microsoft Teams and Forms in the context of running a club online AGM. So just a tiny bit of housekeeping before we do get started. As you may know, this evening's broadcast is a live one, so the attendees' cameras are automatically turned off and their microphones are automatically muted as well. This evening's session will last approximately an hour, so we hope to have it wrapped up by 8 p.m, all going well. I'm delighted to say that we are joined this evening by Michelle Healy, who is the IT officer in Galway, Terry Brady, who is the IT officer in Cork, and Jared Bradley, who is the IT officer in Tyrone. So we have knowledge and experience in barrels this evening, thankfully. There is a Q&A option if you navigate to your taskbar, so if anyone does have a question throughout the stage of the webinar, please do put it into the Q&A option. It's quite a large audience here this evening, so we will do our very best to manage and coordinate the questions as they come in. So we're just approaching 2 minutes after 7, so I think we will get the ball thrown in now. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to you now if you want to take us through a couple of slides.
I'm just checking you can see the slide.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. Good evening, you're all very welcome. This is our second session on Teams and Forms, particularly focused towards a club or even a county club AGM or a county convention. We're going to deal with the sort of basics. We have Terry Brady online tonight, who has actually run his own club AGM. So we have really experience as well. Michelle Healy will be there in the background as well to answer technical questions as well as practical questions. She deals with this type of Teams event at club and county level as well. So we'll take a look at Teams first of all. This will be the platform we would use. I'm using PowerPoint slides just because we're always worried that the internet might be slightly dodgy on an event like this, but they're copies of the exact screens you would see. So online meetings, first of all, there are a number of packages out there you could do this with. Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Meet, sometimes called Hangout. All of them could be used for an AGM, particularly in this particular circumstances for an AGM or a convention. There should be no child protection concerns. Now, the GAA Association issued a directive that if you're using anything where children could be involved at all, you should be using the Microsoft Teams package that's provided to every club officer, number of club officers and county officers. All three offer fairly similar facilities, but you need to be aware the basic Zoom package is time limited. I think maybe for Thanksgiving Day in the US, it was opened, but it will literally terminate the meeting after 40 or 45 minutes. So just be aware if you decide to go that route. But tonight I'll be talking about Teams because it's the package we provide. And it's two reasons for it. It's provided to each GAA main club officer, that's chairperson, secretary, treasurer, PRO, children's officer, and in some counties also you'll have the injury fund officer as well. So they'll all have access to the package, and once you have access to the package, you will have Teams as part of that. And it's also available as a free download to anybody who wants to log on. Now, it's slightly less features, the free one, but for anyone who wants to join, that's the route they can use there. So we'll take a look at Teams now. There's 2 steps to an online meeting, basically. The invitations sent out well in advance. And Terry I'll bring him in a moment now. I think we are advising a trial run is a very good idea, particularly with people who may not be used to this type of facility. And I think, Terry, you did run one, didn't you?
Yeah, I think, to do even between the main officers of the club to maybe have a dummy run and maybe have a dummy run with just to make sure that they're comfortable logging on to a Microsoft Teams meeting.
And people can use this package. It doesn't matter what type of device you have, laptop, desktop, mobile phone, tablet. There's packages for download on all of these types of devices. So you don't necessarily have to be a computer user. You could actually join the meeting on your mobile phone. And in some cases, that will be the way people will be doing it. Consider having a short trial to familiarize people. Send the invitations, which is the same exactly as sending an email. There are 3 different ways you could send an invitation, but tonight we're focusing on the email route. Now, those invited can indicate their availability with accept, maybe, or decline. And I think those of us who have used Teams for a while, you realise a lot of people don't bother, they turn up on the night. That's the same as they would do at the AGM, so there's nothing terribly different about that. So they can indicate whether they're turning up, but there's a slight issue we'll mention. If they hit the wrong button there, it could cause a little problem for them. During the meeting, the organizer can share documents on their desktop or give control of this feature to another person attending. So Jack has set this meeting up tonight, and he's now given me the right to show documents on the screen here to you. We advise having a member who is familiar with Teams to be an online on the night of the meeting, and they have a number of roles. We call them a moderator. They admit people into the meeting and moderate the meeting. They can mute microphones if they're beginning to cause noise in the background, and they can spotlight, which means they can focus on the person speaking, so they occupy a fair amount of the screen. So you actually see clearly who is speaking. So we'll call them the moderator. Terry, once again, moderator, yourself.
Yeah, look, this can be maybe a PRO in the club, or maybe somebody outside of the main officers that are presenting on the night. It's just to keep control of everybody, and that person or anybody with a GA email address can mute these and control and decorum around the meeting itself.
Right, so we'll move on now to actually inviting people to the meeting. So the invitation could be sent in 3 ways, but I'm going to focus on the first one here in red text. Invite from Outlook. Outlook is your email system. You could send it from the calendar inside of Teams, or you could invite a more complex method to invite a team that has been set up. But I suggest that for an AGM, most people will have a list of names of email addresses of the club members. And you could send the link by other methods, by SMS message, or put the link available for people who maybe don't use email that much as well. Now, we're going to contact people through an email. So the invitation link can be copied and forwarded to anybody. Be aware of that. So I receive it, I could send it to someone who is not a member of the club. I know it's hard enough to get people to go to an AGM, but sometimes when it's electronic, people maybe try their hand out to get a copy. You know, somebody from the neighbouring club or something suddenly appears at your meeting. Well, this is controlled by a thing you call the lobby. And here the moderator sits and watches as people arrive at the front door, and they admit people who are members of the club. Somebody who has got the copy of the invitation but is not a member of the club, they'll sit out in the lobby and they'll get very cold. They won't hear or be able to join the meeting. So the invitation is part of an email that either connects to the calendar app. If you use a calendar app, a lot of members won't, so don't get too worried about that. And it'll be a link for those who don't use a calendar. So if you use the calendar app, it'll take you straight into it and have the date and time and all on it. If it's a link, you just click on the link and join the meeting. Now there's one issue, and I mentioned this about the buttons. People will be reporting to you sometimes, I received the invitation, but it has vanished. So they got the email, it was there, they didn't do anything about it, or maybe think they didn't do anything about it, and it seems to have vanished. There's a reason. People who use the calendar app particularly will be reporting this to you. What happens is the email arrives, if they click on the little attachment to it, it does disappear. It goes straight into the calendar. And that's because the email system is set up to automatically delete emails that have invitations in them. Because it's already dealt with them, it thinks. It's put them into your calendar. You can see it in your calendar, the date to the time of the meeting. And if you don't like it doing that, it can be changed. You go into the settings, which is the cogged wheel and the web version of Outlook. It's up on the right hand side at the top of the screen, and then click Outlook settings, calendar, events and invitations, and untick the box that tells it to delete emails with invitations. So if that's happening to you, it's in the deleted box. That's where you can tell them to go and look if they think it's vanished. The email containing the invitation will be received, but when you respond, that's accept, or maybe it's then moved into the calendar. There's one other possibility. Somebody declines, they don't want to go to the meeting. That's fair enough, they can do that. If they do that, it'll be in deleted, but it won't be in the calendar. So it's a little harder to find then. So that's really only the people who use calendar might have that issue. So just to mention that. Right, the moderator. Let's see what roles we have for them. This could be anybody in the club who has used Teams and just knows the menus in the system and has a list of the members to let into the meeting. Now they admit people into the meeting from the lobby. They can mute everyone unless they raise their hand to speak. So if you have a lot of microphones on, you can get background noise. That's why this system we're using tonight, we really only have 3 or 4 microphones all together. If you had 200 on, somebody somewhere will make a movement, make a noise, and that can create what's called feedback, and you get a whistling and background noise. So the moderator just clicks a button and mutes everybody except the person who is looking to speak. Now sometimes, like a classroom, people raise their hands to speak. I don't know, the other speaker says everything they were going to say, but they forget to take their hand down. You get this, particularly maybe in a primary school, I think. The children has a hand up and you say, yes, what do you want to say? No, I don't want to say anything, I just had my hand up. So the moderator would take their hands down after they have spoken. There's also an automatic record kept who attends the meeting. So that's nice for the AGM for the following year. We have a record straight away that can be put into your minutes. It also records those who leave the meeting. And you could count the votes on motions using the raise the hand function. Depends on the size of your club AGM. If it's very big, that might be challenging. If it's the normal size of club that I'm used to, it doesn't take you too long to count the hands who are raised. So that's the moderator. They have an important role. They can obviously speak at the meeting as well, but they just keep an eye on that to one side of their screen. Right, so how do we invite somebody? Well, I've gone into the email system. That's the system given out to every club, and it's the web version, we call it. And the button I'm talking about, just mentioning, you can see a cogged wheel up on the top right hand corner there. That's the settings button if you wanted to change the settings about emails. But I'm particularly interested in a button over at the other side of the menu here. It's 9 buttons. We call it the launcher. But tonight, very strange place. I'm going to ask you to click something you probably have never clicked before. Down at the bottom of the screen on the left hand side, there's a little calendar. Now there is a calendar app, as we mentioned, but there's a little calendar belonging to Outlook. If you click on it, the following will happen. A calendar will open. Now, to invite people, there's really 4 steps involved here. New event. A meeting is called an event. So click a new event. And then this opens up a box where you put some details in. give the meeting a title. I would suggest keep it short. People on a mobile phone don't have a lot of screen, so I've gone for a nice short one, Club AGM. I suggest don't make it too long, otherwise people can't read it all. It wraps around on the. Now we've only three other things to do actually. One, we have to select who we're going to. I'm just going to go back up on a screen here a moment. If you take a look, if I type in CL, it'll go for anything that starts with CL, but it's particularly gone here to this one. You can see club members. That's what's called a contact list. That contains a number of names, 40, 50, 60, 70 club members. They could be the senior players. It could be any group you want. So we're able to have a big contact group and we can click it. So I'm going to click this one here, club members. Put it all in. Now you really, I suppose you're a bit worried, who's in it? Well, we can expand it. We can see who's in it in a moment. Little plus sign on the left hand side of the contact list. If I click that, it'll open out all the names, and I suppose I could remove somebody if I want, but equally well, just straight after the name, I can type in the next email address if I want to put in a couple manually that maybe hadn't been added to a list or something. So that's the important thing there. We've now got the name, title of the meeting. We've got who we're inviting, and that can be, I suppose, a couple of hundred if necessary. Now we're going to put in the date and time. Now the date, obviously you can pick it up with the calendar or type it, click on the calendar and select the date. The time, don't be over ambitious. We'd love to all get meetings over in time. The ending time is not terribly important if you overrun. But if you put down a meeting that's going to last 3 hours, I suggest you'll scare people away. And a short one, maybe too short, is unrealistic. Somebody simply won't believe it. So maybe an hour would be a reasonable time. I put in here half an hour, but I don't reasonably think you would get over an AGM. You're just reading through the reports this year and dealing with a minimal amount of business. But anyway, so we've done three things now. Title, invited the people, date and time. And now there's one very important button we have to click. We have to click down here, add online meeting, and select Teams. If you don't do that, you're just sending an email to everyone to tell them there's an AGM on at such a time, but they can't actually go to the meeting. There's no invitation as such. It's just a piece of information. The meeting's on, I think, the 4th of November here, according to this one, and it's on for an hour. And all these people are invited. These are not real email addresses. We've just created some dummy ones. If you want to delete an email address, just click the X on the right hand side of any name. And equally well, if you want to add some more in, you could keep typing again. But the big important thing is title, invite people, date and time, and select Teams meeting. Once you do that, the invitation's ready to go. On the right hand side of the screen, there's a calendar telling you who's available. Don't worry too much about that. Some people might have already known the date of the AGM and put it in, so it'll be saying they're not available. So don't get too worked up about that one. It would help if you're organizing a smaller meeting to tell you who's available. So next step, we've selected all those things, Teams meeting selected. Screen looks like this now. We click send. Once you send it, that's the invitation done. So it's quite a straightforward process. And we click send. So we'll click send. It's away. Now this message will come up. Now what it's looking at, it says, do you want to make every meeting online? I would suggest skip. Hopefully, as we move out of the pandemic, we might move to some face-to-face meetings, and you wouldn't want every meeting set up as an online meeting. But if you want to set it up for the time being, go to settings, you can, and then every meeting will be an online meeting until you change it. So that'll come up. I would suggest skip for the time being. Now, the meeting has now appeared in the calendar. It's sitting there. And all you do to join the meeting next week or whenever the meeting is click on that item in your calendar, or click on the invitation in an email. Invite yourself, always useful to do, but you will be invited anyway because you've set the meeting up. I'm going to ask you to do the following. If you double click on that meeting, the following screen will come up. It gives you, Microsoft tends to do this. There's a number of places you can join the meeting. You can join the meeting by clicking down there, halfway down the screen, or up at the top right-hand corner, join there either. But I want you to click this one, Meeting Options. When you click Meeting Options, you'll be taken to a new screen. Now, sometimes the system might ask you to put in your username and password again. And here's why. The system is set up to allow people who are or who hold an @GAA.ie account. So they will all be in your organization. It mightn't be in your club. So you might have somebody in your club who's a member of the county committee. They might well have an @GAA.ie address. They will bypass the lobby because they are in the organization. Now, it's hard to suggest there's no problem with them, they probably are a member. But you could have somebody who's not a member of your club arriving. So if you click on the little drop-down arrow there, next to the people in my organization, you get options. And the options are everyone will allow everyone in. They'll just not be in the lobby, they'll just land into your meeting, and then it's very hard to control. I would suggest you don't use that one under any circumstances. You can use any of the others, people in my organization and trusted organizations, or only me. It's entirely up to you, but certainly don't use everyone unless you want the whole country to attend your meeting. Now, so if you click on that, the screen will now look like this. I've set it up as only me, but you could use people in my organization. Now, there's two new options here. The first one is down at the bottom, who can present. You could allow everyone or type in the email addresses of the people who will present. Chairman, Secretary, Treasurer. Everybody else can speak, but not make a presentation on screen. Now, down at the bottom is the new one introduced last week. Allow attendees to unmute. Now, you could say everyone. That means anyone can unmute themselves and start shouting at the meeting. Or you could have specific people or only me. So that's a big method of control. That means you don't speak unless the chairperson or the moderator clicks a button to unmute you. So you have to put your hand up to speak. So it depends on the measure of control you want at your meeting. You do all those and they will then be saved. There's the save button comes up. There's the save button. If you want, as I said, total control there, you could switch that over to no or yes, whichever you suit. And click save. And that means then when people arrive at the meeting, they're all going to be in the lobby. Unless you change to my organization, that would allow your chairperson, secretary, treasurer, but it would allow people from another club who hold an official GA account and somehow got a meeting. I can't imagine people really wanting to attend an AGM from another club, but you know, somebody could do it for just the hell of it sort of thing. Now, so that's it. You've invited everybody. Now, if you're a first-time user, we just want to tell people what people will see who have never used Teams before. They get the link on their phone and they click it. This type of screen will appear. So maybe if it's an elderly person, maybe somebody who's not used IT, that could be young or old, there's nothing to do with that really. Get somebody to install the app. It's the simplest way of doing it, but you have two options. Get the Windows app or Microsoft or Apple, it won't matter, or use the web app. The web app has advantages and disadvantages. You don't install anything, you just go straight in to the meeting as such, but it is more intensive on the internet. It requires more internet, and a lot of areas, no matter where you live, will have relatively poor internet, maybe particularly in rural areas. So that's two options. which do you take? Well, it's entirely up to you. You can use either. The download version is slightly less demanding, so once you have it installed, you don't need to download that from the internet. That bit's on your phone or your tablet or your computer. So if you have poor internet, that might be just improve things slightly. But those who are not used to Teams, well, they might just go for the link. Anyway, if you decide to download, there are 2 downloadable versions, one for a desktop or laptop and one for a tablet or mobile phone. Make sure you choose the right one. If you have good internet connection, the web app will take you directly into the meeting and will work perfectly well. And that also means a good 4G signal. I happen to live in an area that has neither, actually. Now, so that's it. Get the Windows app. It's free, so don't worry about that. It's no cost. Or use the web app. That's the 2 options. So just to be aware of what people will see. So if somebody rings you up, what do I do now? Well, there's the 2 options. Right. So joining the meeting, we now move to the night of the AGM, and I've set up a different type of meeting here. Just give it different names. And what do you do? Sitting there in your calendar, or you click on the link, whichever. If you don't use the calendar, you're using the link. If you use the calendar, it's there. You click on the meeting, and when you click on the meeting, you get this screen that you've seen before. 2 places to join. Join it down there, here at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side, or the top right. So join. Click either. Not both, well, either one of them. And you'll get this type of screen now. So we're into this county management meeting, club AGM, whatever it is. You're still not quite in. You have to click join again. Now bear in mind, people who are not used to this will think I've clicked join before. So just keep members informed, or if you're speaking to somebody, tell them to click again. Now it's set up with a couple of settings automatically here. The camera is switched off. It's muted, the microphone, you won't hear anything. So a lot of people click at that stage and it takes them into the meeting, but they hear nothing, and they may see images of other people, but the other people don't see them. They see literally what you see on the screen, TL. It's just a training account, but it would be your initials or whatever it is there. So anyway, I would suggest that you click the camera on or off. Bear in mind that having the camera off does reduce the demand on the internet as well. And the microphone, well, unless you need to use it, I suggest switch it off. Click join anyway, and then you're in. That's the main screen. So that's you on your own. If there's other people there, they'll appear as little square boxes with either their initials in it or an image of them, a video picture of them if they have the camera on. If they click anywhere on the screen, anywhere at all, you get a menu. And the menu looks like this. So I'll go through the various things on the menu quite quickly. Some of them people who are joining a meeting for the first time would never use, but there's a couple they would have to know about. The first one is to show who's there. Well, I don't know, nosiness sake, you want to see who else is there, or control the mute functions. That will not be available to people who use maybe a mobile phone and such things, but the moderator would want to maybe mute them. The next one is open chat. You could be now typing a message. And the big thing is that if I'm making a presentation, quite literally I am at the minute, I won't see the chat. So the moderator or the chairperson or secretary is watching that, and that's somebody chatting, asking, could you say that again? Could you show the previous slide? It could be something like that, or a question. They could type a question in. The next one is the hand. Now the hand, when you raise it, it will actually appear as a yellow hand on the other screens. So it's quite obvious you can see it, but it's the same button to raise or lower your hand. So you put your hand up and then somebody else asked the question you wanted to ask, or the point has gone on and you want to take your hand down, just click it again. The next one is options. Now this is really to do with what the screen display is like, and unless you're a fairly proficient user, I would keep away from this. But I'll mention some things. Some people don't want to show off their house, so you could actually blur the background. There's a button on a lot of screens now without even going into that to click on some devices. So it just blurs the background, so they see you, but they don't see the furniture or the wallpaper or whatever's behind you. The next button is to switch the camera on or off. The next button is to switch the microphone on or off. And the last one is if you're making a presentation, you click that button, the arrow changes round the other way or changes to an X if you want to stop the presentation. And the most obvious one of all, I haven't put a label on it. If you want to leave the meeting, well, you click leave. It'll record the time you left, and that's just your choice. Right, where can you get the Teams app? Well, I've put a couple of addresses up. Don't bother trying to copy these down. Slides will be shared to you with Jack later. But it depends which country you live in or how your computer is set up. Don't get too occupied about it at all. The top one is if you were notionally a computer set up and living in Ireland. The next one is notionally if you were set up or living in England or America or wherever it is. Don't worry about it. Just click on the link that comes up and that'll download it and ready to set up on your device if you're downloading it. So that's how to invite people to the meeting. And we can have a meeting where chairperson, secretary and treasurer probably have already circulated their reports, hopefully, and people could maybe ask a question about them at the meeting, or maybe the chairperson wants to spend just a bit of time addressing the club. But what we're dealing with here is another method where people maybe could vote at a meeting. Now, the association has sent out directives to clubs and counties to try and minimise the demands and administration for organising an AGM. So we're trying to really, if possible, have a minimal of controversial motions when the pandemic lowers its head and people can get out. We can go back to sitting, having a whole evening arguing about a particular item in the rule book or what. But this year we're really trying to get through the basic procedures and get the clubs and counties ready to function next year. But you could have a motion, and certainly nobody's trying to stop you having a motion. So if you wanted to have a motion and vote on it with larger numbers, you can put up the hands and the moderator can count the yellow hands. That's no problem. But if it's a bigger number, some county committees would be in the region of hundreds, or a county convention certainly would be hundreds. So how could you deal with that? Well, motions would be expected to be in beforehand, but you can use a thing called Microsoft Forms. And we'll take a look. When or would you use forms? Well, voting for elected positions, no. They must be carried out by what's called a delivered vote. That's a sort of an envelope with envelopes inside. So you get an envelope with a vote in it, and inside there's an envelope where you confirm that you're the correct voter. Then you put your vote inside another envelope and you send it back. This allows the votes to be confirmed, they're from the correct source, and your own vote is still a secret vote in the inside envelope. It's put into a box and opened at a later point when the voting takes place. So they'll all be done by a sort of an old-fashioned voting on paper system. That's voting for elected positions. Forms can be used for a vote on a motion at club or county convention. It's really a simple yes or no, and it's similar to you being a delegate at your club AGM or county convention where you raise your hand or in some cases hold up a voting card and somebody stands up at the front and counts them. So that's what it's used. That's the only time you'll be using forms in terms of voting as such, if you want to call it voting for a motion. Alternatively, you could raise your hands if it's a small number. So, and simply if somebody, Terry, I think you suggest this, particularly for proposing and seconding motions or proposing and seconding reports, chairman's report, secretary's report, treasurer's report. Is that what you did, Terry?
Yeah, look, we just asked, we look for a proposer of the secretary's report and the first person to raise their hand, and we just confirmed that then to say, yeah, Joe Kennefick, did you propose the motion? And then the second hand that went up, we took that as the seconder, and that's how we confirmed that the reports were in order.
Yeah, so it's really for something that's instantaneous, that comes up like that, raise your hands. for maybe a motion that's been in, people have considered what they want to do, well, they can use forms. And we've tried to make your life a little bit easier if possible. So raise your hand, that's how you do it. Remember, you need to take your hand down again, otherwise your hand's up all the time. So click it again to lower it. So just remember that. That little icon you can see on the right hand side is the participants, and somebody there has either raised their hand, that's why the one's next to it, or they've typed in a question. So you can't rely on that number as being the number of people voting. It could be somebody has typed a comment, could you please repeat the motion? Okay. And that'll appear as a 1. So just be careful, don't count the hands by relying on that number there. Right, so where is forms and how would you use it? Well, first of all, the button at the top left hand corner of your screen in your email or Teams or any application you're using, it's called the Launcher app. If you click on it, navigation, it'll take you to that. I must change the name on that. And then form isn't shown there. That might be the case. It tries to show the most popular apps. So maybe you've never used forms before and it won't appear then. If that's the case, click on all apps. And then they're roughly in alphabetical order. In fact, they're very much in alphabetical order. And forms will be F, halfway down the alphabet, or whatever number of apps you have there. So if you click on forms, the following will open up. Now, you've never used it before, so there's no forms there. So what we decided to do is you could create a new form, and it's actually very straightforward. And if somebody really wants to create a very, very bespoke one, we can provide them with a set of a handout really to direct you how to do it. But to make life a bit easier, we've created a couple of forms that you can take and use, and all you have to do is type in a couple of words to make them work. So if you want to click on a new form, that's how you would go ahead. But I've created 2 that we can share with you. One's motion to a club AGM and the other's motion to a county convention. They actually are exactly the same, but I'm just showing different features with them. So you'll get these if they're shared with you. We'll arrange for them to be shared with you if you really want them. And if you click on one of them, either of them, then it opens up. And I've just typed in a title, motion to club AGM. If you don't like it, you can change that. Just type in something on top of it. And it's a motion to the county committee that in Costa County have all the meetings next year online. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying you can type in whatever you want instead of those dots. And down here, there's 2 options. Ta, Neil, yes and no. And people click whichever they want to do for that motion. And the moment they do, there'll be another button down at the bottom, submit. And that vote could be sent in during the meeting if you wanted, or you could allow them a couple of days after, whatever the club has arranged to do. But we'll just show you how you would share that form now. So that's the form ready, that's the vote, whatever the motion is. There would be ready. The second one is slightly different. It's a motion to the county convention. And there's always a worry that somebody could get hold of a copy of this form and start voting. So there is a way of confirming who is voting. You put in another question here. Please confirm the full email address being used for the vote. So you'll know who should be voting, and every vote will have an email on it. Now, if you want to sort of just a quick vote at the club, hands up or Ta Neil will do. If it's more sensitive about a motion, and typically this could be maybe some club wants to change a county bylaw, be amended as follows, you know, the type of thing you see. But you would then ask for an email address to be put in. So that means you can confirm who the vote's coming from. I know people worry that everyone will know who you voted for, but if you stick your hand up at a county convention, I'm sure your neighbouring club will know who you voted for. Now, so that's a compulsory question. If they don't put in their email address, you can't submit. Now, if you want to, you've got your vote ready, whatever it is, and you're going to send it out to whoever it is, Club AGM. All you have to do is click on this button here, share, after you've typed in whatever the motion is. And then make sure anyone with the link can respond. If you don't, the only people who can respond are people with the official @gaa.ie addresses. That'll only be 5 people or 6 people in your club, or unless there's a county officer sitting in the club as well. So make sure that anyone with the link can respond. And then you click copy. Now what that does is copies a big piece of code that you're going to stick into an email just. So when you click copy, done, we now move back to the email. This launcher button on the top left hand corner, that's the 9 buttons. You're going to click it next. So when you click it, you're taken back to all these applications. Notice that Forms has now appeared in the list because you've used it. But if you click Outlook, which is your email, and then just paste it into an email. Now I know it looks horrible, and sometimes it actually comes up much better than that, but frequently it comes up looking like that. But when the person receives the email, if they click on that, the voting form appears, and it looks something like this. That's what it'll look like. And you have an option here, just a feature I'll mention, if we want to use our own language. If you click up here, you can set up any language in the world you want. I wouldn't just be happy with some of the translations, but Microsoft and Seattle are doing their best, I suppose, here. Neil and Ta was typed in, but you can see that you've got some bit of Irish put in there at least. If you want to do that, you can. But they click vote and click submit. That's it. What happens? Oh, that's what it looks like on a phone. That's the English version there. Now, vote and submit. And sitting back, the secretary on their screen instantly gets the number. 12 people have voted, 7 yes, 5 no. I don't know. Club constitution says you only need 2/3. So sorry, we haven't got the 2/3. You could, if you want to confirm email addresses, they would start to show up. You wouldn't be putting that up on screen, I suggest. And in case anyone thinks I didn't get anybody, these are names I just put in automatically, or anyone at any.com, and IT officer in Derry. I'm sure the IT officer won't mind me saying, and Tom Ryan didn't vote either, but they're just to show you what it would look like if somebody was voting that way. So instantly you get the result of the vote. 7 for, 5 against, depends on what it's about. It could be set up and you go ahead. So you get the results immediately. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. What we'll try and deal with now is any questions, or just finish up. So I'm going to hand back now screen, hopefully.
Yeah, I think I'll just come in there, Jared. That was top class. Thank you very much for that. Definitely extremely informative. No doubt clubs and members alike will definitely find that beneficial. Just to note as well, as Jared mentioned there, all Microsoft Teams live broadcasts are recorded. So our plan is to sort out the recording tomorrow and send that out en masse to clubs and counties, along with the slides that Jared just presented there. I know Michelle has been doing Trojan work there throughout the webinar. The Q&A questions have been flying in there, and she's been putting out the fires as they come in. So I think I'll hand over to Michelle, if you don't mind, just for those who maybe can't see the questions or have trouble accessing them. We might just read them aloud just so we cover all bases, if that's all right.
Okay, yeah. So can you hear me okay?
Yes, no problem.
Okay, I see you nodding. Okay, so the first question is, can you have a dial-in number for a Teams meeting? So I guess that option isn't available as part of the standard Microsoft Teams offering that we're presenting here, but there is the possibility for county secretaries or operations responsibles to request a license upgrade and get that via Crow Park IT. And that will enable both a dial-in option, a phone conference number, as well as join via the meeting link option. So hopefully that answers that question. So then the second one is, any advice for ensuring participants in the meeting are the actual person named and not somebody claiming to be them? Would sending the actual link an hour before the meeting be a measure to control? So I guess as part of the presentation, Jared covered moderating a meeting in terms of who can admit people into the meeting. So ideally you should know who is joining, but if someone turns off their camera and brings 5 people into their living room to join the meeting, there's no way of IT policing that, unfortunately. So we're all adults and we're expecting that people will behave responsibly and, you know, only turn up at the AGM if they have an actual valid invite. But the moderator option at least allows to have some level of control on who is attending the meeting. So that's important. So the next question is, when the invite to the AGM is sent, will an invitee be able to see the full list of everyone who was sent an invite? So the answer here is that no, if you're invited to the meeting, it'll only come to you. But however, the meeting organizer will be able to see who has been sent the invite. Okay, the next one. Yes, the slides will be available. Then this one has already been more or less covered. Does each attendee require their own email address? Not every member has one, particularly older people, and I assume if 2 people share the one screen to attend, that only one of them is recorded as an attendee. Please confirm or clarify this. So yes, if you have 3 people sitting around a device but only one person is logged in, then only that person that is logged in will be recorded as an attendee. In the scenario that there's 2 other people in the room, they need to either identify themselves by speaking or get the person who is using the device to type their names into the chat box. Otherwise, there's no record of them attending. Okay, the voting options we've covered. How many moderators can be? So 1 moderator for each meeting. The next one I missed to answer. If someone is nominated for 2 officer positions, does that mean we still have to send 2 postal votes for that person for both roles? I guess that will be the case. Unless they announce in advance that they're withdrawing their name for one role. That would be my
assessment
of that.
That would be the case. If you haven't withdrawn, your name will be on the voting slip.
Yeah.
But there are rules about holding 2 positions at county level as well, so there's...
Yeah. Okay, so the next one, for Player of the Year, for example, with 4 nominees, can this be done via a forms vote? So I guess in the context of this meeting, we're covering voting on motions, but in general, you can use Microsoft Forms for numerous voting options. If you want to use it for Player of the Year, technically it's possible. We'd really appreciate access to the pre-made forms. I think those are being made available as part of the presentation, the links to those.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll do that.
Right, there's 9 other questions that have just popped up. So any GDPR concerns with forms, what does Microsoft do when any email addresses submitted?
There's 2 answers to that. Every time you send an email with Outlook, you have exactly the same risk. They have all the email addresses every time you send an email. So it's, you know, it's not really a GDPR. GDPR is where you identify somebody with a series of pieces of information. An email address on its own probably wouldn't. We're not exposing them. Hopefully, because the email, as you've said already, doesn't show everybody's address. The forms, if you don't put on that question requesting their email address, well then it just comes in anonymous from everybody who voted.
Okay. So there's a few more questions that I've just moved over. Okay, maybe it's hang on. So let's see, where did we pick up from? So could you explain again the delivered vote it's not possible to elect offers in a virtual AGM? A question in from Finton.
The delivered vote is a vote sent out in an envelope with the names of the people who are standing for the positions on a voting slip. But there's a series of envelopes, because you'll get the envelope is delivered to you in. Then you make your vote, whichever it is, or proportional representation, 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever. You put that into an envelope which is sealed and put inside another envelope, which is used to return the vote. And there's also a confirmation who you are, that you've actually voted. But your vote itself doesn't have your name on it, but there's a separate piece of paper to confirm. So that's the delivered vote. So it's, I know some clubs, maybe it's difficult to get nominations and everything before an AGM, but maybe it's a chance to put things in order. So the list of nominees are there. They have the right to withdraw. Hopefully they make their decision in time for the secretary to know. Secretary sends out those who are actually standing for the position, and therefore the vote then is sent back by a delivered vote. It wouldn't be using forms. It's postal, in other words. I'm not sure how that goes down in America.
Okay, the next question, should you record your club AGM on Teams or not? I guess the option is there to do that. When you do hit record, you know, the data privacy notice comes up, and by accepting that, then you're giving permission for the meeting to be recorded, I guess.
If you are recording, Michelle, I would announce, the moderator should announce that that the meeting is being recorded.
Yeah. Okay, next one. If sending a form to be completed, should we use the email list for the notice of the AGM, or is there a way to only send it to the attendees of the AGM?
The answer is you have to be working online during the meeting to see who's there. Now, the delivered vote technically would be sent out before the meeting, so it could be sent to members. But if you're voting on a motion, you could, but it means that somebody needs to have all the email addresses ready and send it, the form to those addresses only. It's obviously puts an onus on the moderator or somebody else now. Has quite a bit of work to do in the background, because, well, as soon as you see who's attending the meeting, you would have to assemble an email list. Now, if you had them in a contact list, I suppose you could start deleting the people who are not there, but you know, there's a deal of work involved in that, to be truthful.
Yeah.
It might be better just to put your hand up for those at the meeting.
Yeah. So next one is just a comment. Is it possible to get more info on forms? So I think we have some more documentation that we can possibly share.
Yeah, there was previous webinars done on forms alone as well, but I think Jared did them himself, so we can include a link to previous webinars done on that as well in the correspondence that goes out.
Okay. The next one, I take it that the form is only sent to those at the AGM as opposed to those entitled to being in attendance.
Well, in a lot of clubs, you can't vote on a motion unless you're at the AGM. The delivered vote will keep that. That's a separate rules issue. So if the club allows only those who turn up at the meeting to vote on a motion, then you would only be sending the form to those who are at the meeting. But I explained the complication that you need to compile a list pretty quickly, you know, and get the list ready to send the form out to them. Or maybe you allow them a period of time after the meeting to come in with their votes. If you do that, I suppose they don't get that instant thing where somebody counts the number of hands, but the secretary could inform those who attended the meeting what the result of the vote was. A lot of club meetings could be on the smaller side, so counting the hands is possible. Terry, was that the case for you?
Yeah, we just put the hands up and counted the hands.
But it depends on the size of the club and the attendance at the AGM.
Okay, the next one is maybe a controversial one, and one that the IT committee are not responsible for deciding, but an observation: the online AGM alternative seems far too complex for most AGMs, given typical membership base. Wouldn't it be far more sensible to recommend that for most clubs, deferring the AGM until Q1 next year if needed is the most sensible and preferred option?
That option is certainly available to clubs, and the club has to judge the thing entirely, how they can get the best response from their members and feel that they represent their members.
I suppose just what we did in our club was we got the critical business out of the way. We got the officers elected, we got the reports adopted for the year, and we said we'd hold an EGM once restrictions were lifted to go through to review the year in detail.
Okay, next one is a process one again. Can we send nomination papers or last year's minutes along with the invitation, or should these be sent separately?
Well,
again, I mean, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
No, you go ahead. Terry's experienced this one too.
Yeah, look, I would recommend that they be sent out separately, and ideally they should be shared from your OneDrive. But if you want to attach them to an email, I would send them out separately, would be my advice. And I wouldn't recommend sending out the financial reports. That report should be shared on the night of the AGM.
Okay, a few more have popped in. So if a person holds 2 positions within the county board, are they entitled to 2 votes?
We're not really the rules committee, you need.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you can hold 2 positions on the county. There are 2 you could hold, I think. That would really be something for the rules advisory committee, not us, IT's awkward enough without burying that. But it's a genuine question, but
Yeah.
The rules advisory people are definitely there. They provide a lot of supplementary information for anybody who has an issue.
Yeah, and normally the county secretary clarifies as part of setting up the AGM how many votes per club and delegates and so on. So that's generally communicated out by the county secretary as part of preparing for convention. With delivered vote, are only the votes for those who attended the virtual AGM included?
Again, very much rules. We're trying to avoid that one. It depends on what the actual setup at a club situation. Who's allowed to vote? Is it all members, or is it only those who attend the AGM? County one's similar type of thing, but it's a slightly more organised thing. The county one is probably easier to handle in many ways, although it's much larger. But it depends on what their system is, and the rules are laid out fairly clearly who can vote. I'm deliberately not giving a straight answer to that in case anyone thinks.
Yeah, I guess we've another similar one. Then are the votes counted before the AGM?
Well, I suppose if they were in at the meeting, you could technically do that. Sometimes there might be a delay to afterwards. It depends on the actual time frame. PR votes are notoriously can be slow and difficult to do, so you wouldn't want to be sitting at a virtual AGM going through that process maybe. But rules things, we can get the rules people. They have provided a lot of information to clubs, and they will definitely answer questions that we are getting up tonight,
Yeah. Okay, can a vote not be taken online through a poll?
Well, you've used other systems. There are polls available in other platforms. I do know that. Well, putting your hand up is a sort of a poll in many ways. But we've been talking particularly about Teams tonight, and the option would be to put up your hand, or you could create a form online as well for those who are present. If somebody asked about how you would send it, you can create a form in the Teams panel to send out to the people who are at the meeting. I'm not sure I'm exactly answering the question here, what they mean by a poll. A poll could be putting your hands up. Some of the other platforms actually have a method at county level. The IT department have arranged an arrangement where they could get a specific program. I'll not name it, but they have a license for a county to use it, but they would need to book it beforehand to have a polling type voting. So if a county was going to do that, they would need to let the IT department in Croke Park know in advance. It couldn't be ring up tonight and I need it tonight type of thing. It would have to be made. There's a limited number of licenses for a polling system. In clubs, we thought it might be much more straightforward.
Yeah. Okay, the next one then is one that I have seen answered by Rules Advisory or as part of the process communicated, but it's just a question: have any clubs considered, or is it an option, to freeze the officers in position to continue for 2021, provided they all agree? And yes is the short answer. That is an option. If those officers are willing and interested in continuing on for the next year, even if their term has been served, that has been sent out as part of the advice to clubs. I think we've got everything there that has come in.
Yeah, I think that's all of them now, Michelle. We're just 2 minutes after it as well, so we're more or less right on time anyway. I think we're best to wrap it up there anyway. As we said, we finished around 8 o'clock. Yeah, so just to wrap it up, as I said, these live broadcasts from Microsoft Teams are automatically recorded. So we will work on getting the recording distributed along with all the other materials used throughout the presentation to clubs and counties, hopefully by the end of the week at the latest. So we'll be working on that. And also just a word to keep an eye on the GAALearning YouTube and Twitter accounts, as we regularly post stuff there, like the recordings of this webinar and other webinars, and any upcoming info will be posted there as well. So just to wrap up, my sincere thanks to Michelle, Terry and Jared for the work that they've put in, not just this evening, but over the last couple of weeks in preparing for this as well. And also to everyone who attended. I've no doubt that everyone would have found this beneficial and informative for their upcoming AGMs. So we'll wrap it up there, and thanks very much everyone again. Salam, folks.
Salam.
Right.